camera level? Yeah, it is. Let me just try a square crop. I've got some stuff left and right which I don't like. Yeah, I think that's okay. Check focus point. Yeah, that's alright too. So, no highlights, f8, 1/8 of a second. And let's have a look. What have we got? Yeah, that's okay. Not bad. Not bad at all. Boom. Nice. Good afternoon, everybody. And welcome to another day back out in the landscape. Today is a very challenging day. It's persistent drizzle. It's overcast, it's grey. Kind of day where you'd probably want to stay back in your lodgings or your house or whatever, not venture out into the landscape, but I've travelled to be here. I'm here for a few days, and guess what? This weather is forecast for at least 3 of those 4 days, which is not great. But I'm trying to use the weather conditions to my advantage, and I'm playing with my old favourite, which is moving water. Now, the images that I'm taking today, they're not going to be competition winners, I know that, but and I've said this before, I am a sucker for moving water. I love capturing moving water. Now, that said, out of all the images that I've created that feature moving water, probably only a handful of them are what I would say are belters, you know, absolutely banging images that I would consider entering into an international competition to represent me and my photography. But these are the conditions I've got. I found a subject that suits those conditions, and this is an opportunity to practice and to play. Now, in practicing and playing, I have come to realize that this camera, which is my Sigma fpL, is definitely a landscape photographer's camera. Now, I have no idea whether Sigma designed this camera to be a landscaper's camera or not, but for me, out in the landscape, it's just perfect. It's not an all-round camera. I know that, and I knew that when I bought it. And it's taken me, where are we now? Nearly 6 months to actually work out why I think and why I believe this camera is a landscaper's camera. And that's what I want to talk to you about today in front of this waterfall. I mentioned in the introduction that this is not an all-round camera like my Olympus EM1 or like a Canon R5 or an i6 or an R6 or one of the Nikon Z cameras or the Panasonic or whatever. They are all-round cameras that have been designed to be used for multiple purposes and multiple genres. This is not one of those cameras, and I found that out when I went to West Bay during the winter on a particularly stormy day where I was trying to track waves coming in off the sea and then crashing against a breakwater or a pier or a jetty or whatever. Now, maybe on that circumstances, the fact that I was using a Canon lens through an adapter and therefore autofocus was struggling, maybe that was a factor. I don't know. Next time I go and try that kind of subject with my L mount 100 to 400 Sigma lens, maybe this camera will perform better. But based on my experience to date, this camera suits static subjects where I am not moving, where focus is very deliberate. Autofocus is fine in this camera, but autofocus tends or seems to be at its strongest on a static rock or a static twig or a tree or whatever. Autofocus on moving subjects, this camera appears to struggle with. And for that reason, I think this is one of the primary reasons as to why this camera is really suited to the landscape. So as you can see from my appearance, my hair and the clothes that I'm wearing, today is a not very pleasant day in the landscape. This camera is fully weather sealed. I can't remember the number of rubber grommets or whatever that this camera contains to make it weather sealed, but it is. One of the reasons why I chose for my Olympus kit the EM5 and EM1 range was specifically because they were weather sealed. Because of what I do, I'm predominantly out here, and you know, like on this occasion, I've traveled a distance to be here, it's raining. I'm not going to sit in my lodgings and just watch the rain hammer the window. I'm going to come out and try and make the most of it. So the fact that this is weather sealed is fantastic, because that enables me to do that. Any camera that a landscaper will buy, they will make sure that it's weather sealed for that simple reason. I've used Sigma lenses for years. When I used to shoot Formula One motorsport, I used Sigma lenses. I think the EX range was what was available at the time, and I used those lenses in all weather conditions and in all temperatures, and they worked flawlessly. This lens is a contemporary lens. I'm keeping the cloth on it because it's still raining, and I have had this lens out in all weathers for the last 6 to 7 months, and it still works perfectly. I have a Sigma 100 to 400 in my bag. I've also had that out in all weathers and all temperatures, and it still works perfectly. Lenses aside, the fact that this body is weather sealed is again a primary reason as to why I believe this is a landscape photographer's camera. The size and the weight of this camera makes it ideal for landscape photography. So right now I have the camera, the EVF, and I have a 28 to 70 contemporary lens. This setup alone is more than suitable for most forms of the landscape photography that I use. Off the top of my head, I don't know the weight. I'll put it on the screen now. But it's not a heavyweight piece of kit. Just heading out into the landscape with this setup alone and a few filters means that I can climb a mountain if I choose, scramble over rocks if I choose. I'm not hampered by this huge heavy backpack. Now, I had exactly the same advantage with the Olympus system that I also use, but what this gives me is a full frame sensor with 61 megapixels and the opportunity to crop should I choose. With the Olympus system, I am using a small sensor, and a small sensor does have its limitations. Those limitations are removed with this camera. So as a landscaper's piece of kit, it is ideally suited to lugging around mountains and over streams and heavens knows what else. Far more so than other current full frame systems that are on the market right now. So this is the back of my Sigma fpL. There is a function in this camera called the quick select function. It's not unique to this camera. There are lots of camera systems that have a similar feature, but pressing this button here brings up a set of options that enables you to quickly change common things. And I think this can be customized. And like I say, I know that there are other camera systems that have them. On my Olympus system, it's called the Super Control Panel. Similar idea, push a button and you get a very simple range of options. But when you look at the options that we've got here, they are the sorts of options that a landscaper would use. So we have ISO. We have how the metering actually works, spot metering or the whole frame, 2-second timer, 10-second timer, interval if you wanted to use it, or just hit the shutter. I tend to have it on a 2-second timer. White balance, if that's your thing. File type, file size, and one of the ones that I use the most, which is frame size. It allows you to go from 21 by 9, 16 by 9, etc, 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 up to 1 by 1. Fill light, which is exposure compensation that you can apply in stages. But these are functions that a landscaper would use. And I've no idea whether Sigma have done this deliberately or not, but they are things that I use the most. Very rarely do I go into the menu and start playing with the menu. Most of the time, if I want to change something, I find it in here and nowhere else. Like I say, I have no idea whether Sigma have chosen to do it deliberately or not, but these options are the options that I use within the landscape. And again, it's another reason as to why for me this camera system just works in the landscape without really having to do a huge amount of faffing and a huge amount of fiddling. So the best images that I've had out of this camera have been when I have used it deliberately and carefully. And to some extent, the camera system itself, it pushes you to work that way. You can't, well, I have found anyway, you can't just switch the camera on and bang, use it. Because as I said in the introduction, it's not an all-round camera. You have to use it deliberately. It forces you to slow down. To some extent that appeals to me, because I've found that not the best images that I've created, but certainly those images that I would consider to be most considered have been those images where I have taken my time, where I have considered the options, but also where I've had the flexibility within the camera system to explore all the range of photographic options that are available. Now, Sigma themselves published a video on their own YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to it in the description below, where they describe why they believe this camera is suited to landscape photography. And I would make the point that the reasons that I've described are my reasons and my reasons alone. And they're my reasons based on using this thing for the last 6 months. I can honestly say to you all, I am delighted with my purchase. I am going to continue using it. I don't see any reason why I can't use it alongside my Olympus system. They both have their strengths and their weaknesses. Those occasions, maybe next time I go to the coast, I will bring this and I will bring the Olympus system with me, because I know that the Olympus can cope with moving water and moving waves and all that good stuff. Whereas my previous experience with this has been such that I have my doubts. So if I bring both, then I'm covering both options and I will learn from that experience. So these reasons are my own. I hope by sharing these reasons that you'll find it useful in terms of if you are considering a new camera purchase or you're looking at moving from one brand to another, that these are things that you might think about if you're a landscaper. And that's my whole purpose for sharing them. A disclaimer, Sigma have not paid me to say these things. Everything that's here has been bought with my own money. I am not a Sigma fanboy. I am just enjoying using this camera, which was a considered purchase at the time. And I'm just sharing my experience in the hope that somebody else will find it useful. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Please comment, subscribe, and give the video a thumbs up if you like it. And until I see you back out in the landscape again, take care, stay well, and stay safe. Goodbye for now.